Hey, we've got Liz Gunn in the background now. We're going to bring her on in just a minute to talk about what happened at Auckland Airport last week. So, Liz, welcome to the show. Nice to meet you.
Thank
Hope
you.
you're doing well.
Look, I've still got my arm in a brace because there's a fracture just down where the thumb comes down and kind of meets the wrist. Around about there, there was a little fracture, and that's because this guy from the police who came up and said, "Get out of the airport," and we hadn't been trespassed. We were standing there meeting the Tokelauan, our Tokelauan brothers and sisters, the Patalesio family, who we helped to get out of lockdown. And we were really excited, and there were about 50 other people with iPads and iPhones, and we just had a camera where we could get some high resolution images. But we are not getting income from this. We don't sell this material. This is not a business. We are volunteers, and we have been for 2 years. And I had just tried to explain it to the airport security person, not arguing, not being rude, not being aggressive, just saying, look, can you explain why you're picking us out of all the other people who come and film at the airport? You know, what is this rule? She was very, very brittle and aggressive, and did that thing of talking over, where she wouldn't, that thing that's happened in New Zealand in the last 2 years. The biggest thing we can do in New Zealand is not talk over each other, because then we'll hear and then we'll understand one another. So she went off and got the police. This guy rocks up behind me and goes, "Get out of the airport." And I think every New Zealander should know this. If a policeman tells you to do something, the first question is to say, under what piece of legislation are you acting? What's the law here? What's giving you these rights to do this? Well, he wasn't having a bar of it, and he grabbed my hand and he twisted it right behind, the way we saw in the Wellington Freedom Village, right behind, very painful. I'm a grandmother. I've got a 1.5-year-old grandchild. It was just beyond my comprehension. I've never been in a situation like that. He was violent straight away. This was within 10 seconds of his arrival behind me. And it's very hard to think really clearly, like part of your brain is just going, what the hell is going on? What is happening? I stay very calm under pressure. I've had that from years of being in media. So, I wanted to speak, but he'd really exacerbated the situation, inflamed it. So there was no discussion, nothing like these old community constables who used to say, let's step outside and have a discussion. None of that, just total escalation by the police. And so as the pain of it, when he twisted my arm right behind my shoulder and it was coming, my hand was right up there, I sort of dropped down. I think my knees kind of gave way. And then I felt him pulling my thumb back, really pulling it hard. And so I yelled, "Stop it, you are hurting me." And the second time I heard him say, "Good." And then he started going, "Move, move." But I was down on the floor. It was just like a reaction from him, just to up the bullying. And what I think he did was he pulled my thumb so hard that a little bit of crack happened at the wrist there. Anyway, it was a horrific situation. And the explanation I gave the other day on Twitter Spaces was, if you ever want to know what it feels like to be a sack of potatoes, being arrested in 2023 by a New Zealand police, what I would call a thug, and I'll be happy to say that in front of the judge. That's what it feels like. It feels as if all your human rights have gone, all human dignity, all human compassion and kindness and just everything that made New Zealand great. And it really, for a moment there, I thought, am I in communist China? It was horrific. And I didn't resist as he was rough and brutal. And he got me up and he was walking behind me. And I looked at all these kind of very numbed faces. And I said, we have to stand together. We are losing our country. Outside, there was a photograph of him leaning over me. I was saying to him, please don't hurt my wrist. My wrist is hurting. You don't have to put those, I keep calling them cufflinks, but I've never had them on my wrists before. What are they called? Handcuffs. I've never had handcuffs on. Obviously, I've never been arrested. And he just did it. Everything he wanted to do was kind of to humiliate, I felt. And when he'd finally done that, and I went over to Jonathan, my wonderful cameraman, who'd been rugby tackled from the side, and our camera had been smashed. He also was in handcuffs. I was still really calm. I turned to him and said, what is the legislation under which you are purporting to act? And this was really frightening, Dave. He said, I don't have to tell you that, in that kind of voice. And so I said, since when, sir? And he said, since forever. Now, the third policeman who came along, I repeated that, and he said, well, that's absolutely wrong. A policeman always has to say to one of the people he's paid out of our taxes, and he's meant to represent us and be there to keep the peace. If we ask him a question like that, and it's polite and calm, he should always explain the legislation. So halfway through, they came to me and said, we can drop all this, make it go away, if you will admit you did something wrong. And I looked at that third policeman and said, but I didn't do something wrong. And he just looked at me in silence. And then I thought of all the other people this could happen to, all the other middle New Zealanders, all the other grandmothers, all the other children, youths, people in their 70s. How brutal is this country going to get if we don't stand up? So there was no choice. And I just said to him, well, I will agree to that if you will make sure that thug signs a piece of paper in front of me admitting that he said good when I told him it was hurting, and admitting that he has really roughed me up. And the policeman said, that's never going to happen. So I said, well, let the cards fall where they may, and we'll go to court. And I will put this before a judge, because I have to, as a lawyer, still believe that we have a justice system that is just in New Zealand. And what that policeman did was so unjust. Sorry, it's a long explanation, but it's important for all Kiwis, this story.
No, that's all good. Thanks for your story. And whatever the situation was, obviously that was a horrific incident for you. So we obviously our thoughts and prayers are with you, and we hope that you are getting better and doing well. I've had a few questions come in from people throughout the week when they heard that you were coming on. This is the Auckland Airport website directly, basically saying if you would like to film or take photo commercially at Auckland Airport, that you need to seek approval in advance of your visit. The question that's come through is, did you have prior approval to film or take photos at the airport before you went in? And
the most important word there is commercially. And I think I addressed that early on. We're not a commercial organization. We do this voluntarily, and we do it because we care about freedom in this country being taken. We care about tyranny coming in. And look, just this last week, with a hand in a sling, I've had to move house, and I've had to move because we couldn't afford the rent where we were living. I've given up everything for this work over the last 2 years, because I think we really all should give up as much as we possibly can to stand for the freedom in our country. So I explained that, and that's actually on the recording of the microphone that they took, where I was saying to somebody else, not the woman who came up to us, but someone else in the airport, look, I just wanted to explain to her, we're not a commercial enterprise. We're not like TV1 or TV3 where you get a daily wage for doing this job. We are just a group of volunteers, and we literally came out to be like family greeting family. And our camera might be a little bit bigger, but it's not for money that we're doing this. We're doing it for love.
So from the perspective of the airport, is it, I guess, conceivable then that because you had a dedicated camera person and because you weren't using it, I guess, for strictly personal use, could that have been why they would have, and do they have a point there that it could be for commercial use, even if it's not being sold or used for profit?
Commercial use means commerce, and commerce means you're making money from it. But there is another section to those regulations, because I've looked at those, and it says with social media, if you're filming, in other words, doing social media or just greeting family and friends, and you're going to put it up on social media, which is what we do to let other Kiwis who care about the Patalesios know. That was what our intention was. It just says make sure you've got the permission of the people you're filming. And obviously, we've found lots of footage online since of, like, I think it was a rapper coming back, and there was a big haka, and the camera was panning all across the crowd. We weren't doing any of that. We were just going to pan and film in on the Patalesios. And, there are lots of all black welcomes where you see lots of crowd shots. We weren't filming any of that. We were just filming the family who'd said to us, we would love you there. So if you read the regulations a bit further down, that's what it says. You just have to have the permission of someone who is being filmed if it's social media.
Right. Okay. You were arrested and charged with assault, trespass, and resisting arrest. Now, the trespass one was interesting to me because in order to be arrested for trespass, I would assume that you would have to have been previously trespassed from a venue. Have you been trespassed from the airport before?
You've just cut out. Are you there?
Can you hear me? I think we both cut out there. So just to go back over my question, in order to be arrested for trespass, my understanding is that you would have had to be previously trespassed from a venue. Had you been previously trespassed from the airport or anywhere in the area?
I've never been trespassed from there. And my understanding also is that it was up to the airport security to give us written or at the very least verbal notification that we were trespassed, and we didn't have that. All she said was, you're not to use that camera. And then I was saying to her, what is your reason? Under what rule is this? And are you aware we're not a commercial enterprise? So that's as far as the conversation got with that airport security woman, but she wasn't listening. But I would have said before the policeman came in and said, get off the property, we would have to have had a notification from some.
Oh, I think Liz has just cut out there. We'll just hold on for a second and see if the connection comes back. Just chuck up in the comments if you can hear me or if you can hear her.
I can.
There we go.
It's a bit funny. Yeah.
There we go.
So I think that the protocols weren't observed, and that could be another reason why they came up and said, oh, let's just drop this. And, I could have dropped it to save my own, it would have been my own sorry ass if I just thought about myself, but I didn't. I think that there's a bigger picture here, and that it's important to stand and say what went on there was absolutely unjustified, out of all proportion. There was no resistance to arrest, not at all. If anything, I was just so staggered by the amount of violence that was perpetrated on me for nothing. So, and what was the other charge?
Assault, trespass, and resisting arrest.
There was no assault. The only assault thing I could think they're trying to trump up is that with the woman who wouldn't listen. I'm quite tactile. If you look at my interviews, I often will reach out and touch someone who's crying or whatever. I just am a tactile person. And when she wouldn't listen, I gently laid my hand on her forearm and said, look, can we just talk about this? Because she was very prickly and sort of very angry person. And she pulled her arm away and said, don't touch me, which, again, just struck me as very non-Kiwi and highly sort of, exacerbating the situation, certainly not inflaming a situation. So I said, I apologize, but that is not an assault. And there are very good witnesses who will testify to that, and including a doctor there who was just horrified at what he saw, horrified. He said there was no reason for them to do that to you, Liz. So they are willing to testify in court.
Oh, that's interesting because I imagine that the airport security cameras will be in court, so it'll be very interesting to see how they work that one, and be interesting to see the footage there in court because I imagine that will be very helpful.
I've already applied on Friday through a lawyer to get that airport footage. So let's hope something hasn't gone wrong with the airport cameras. I'm sure they'll be honourable.
A couple more things before I let you go tonight, Liz. You were formerly worked at you were host of several radio and TV shows in the past, and some of your colleagues have spoken out publicly about it. 7 Sharp host Hilary Barry has spoken out about her concern for former TV presenter Liz Gunn after the conspiracy theorist was arrested at Auckland Airport, and she tweeted, "This is posted without animosity, but please keep Liz Gunn in your thoughts and prayers. Her descent into the conspiracy realm makes me really sad and concerned." And then singer Lizzie Marvelly also replied, saying, "It's very painful to watch. I feel sorry for her and also despair for the people she's influencing and dragging down the rabbit hole with her." Just quickly, do you have a response to those?
I thought that was really toxic femininity. If you want to know what toxic femininity looks like, it's when a woman pretends to care and she doesn't, when she looks to say something really undermining in this very patronizing ersatz caring way when it's not caring at all, when in fact what they're both looking to do is deride and, find another way to spin the government narrative, which they've done from my first love letter, simply because I talked about Mother Earth crying for her people. It's a metaphor Indigenous people would understand, but what they did from that day, the only way from my first love letter, obviously the PR spin doctors said, how are we going to bring down Liz Gunn? Let's call her mad. Well, that's an old trope, and that's what I said to Sean Plunkett as well. This is a tired trope it's been used since the era of the witches, I think, let's call any woman who dares to stand out from the pack. Particularly women get this, actually, and sadly, it's worst when it's from other bitchy women. Let's call any woman who dares to stand out, be articulate, think for herself, think differently, and have insane, nuts. Well, I'm highly, highly rational. I've done a lot of work, through law and through media, but I've also done a lot of personal work to really understand who I am. And I want to register here that trope, that tired, old, hackneyed cliche for a woman, it just won't work in this case. And I don't think any woman or any man who has a different view should be called that. We should have a society where diversity of views is celebrated. And it's that old adage, I may not agree with what you think, but I will die for your right to say it and express it and think it. And I think it just showed those two women as not just bitchy, but extremely small-minded and not particularly intelligent. I mean, I don't know why either of them is in mainstream media. We need a much higher standard of commentariat in our mainstream media. But that's what you get when the government wants people who are shills, who are going to just say what they want and speak the government narrative. And it leaves it up to the rest of us. It behoves us to be inordinately brave and call them out. And I think that's what thousands of Kiwis did with people are telling me her nickname is Shillery Barry because she's a shill for the government. Someone wrote to me and said, Liz, it was Thursday, there are 975 comments supporting you, and there's only one comment supporting Shillery. So, it doesn't, Kiwis are seeing through it. We're not a stupid nation. And Lizzie, what's her name? The singer. I mean, I don't know why she's a commentator anyway, but, it's as if she's saying Kiwis are so weak-minded that if I express a view, I'll be leading them down a whole, no, they take my views and they take Shillery's views and they take all these views and we all do. And we go, does that make sense? Yeah, it makes sense. Or no, it doesn't make sense to me. And a lot of us are looking at mainstream media now and saying, you guys just don't make sense anymore. You guys just are so sold out and so corrupted. I think Joe Rogan about a week ago said, it's happening around the world. And he was talking about it and he said, I just call them whores. They're sellouts. They're being paid. They're being paid to prostitute what is, I think, a sacred profession. If we don't have a strong, independent media, we will have a tyrannical government. And I want to add at the end of this interview, that's why I appreciate the professionalism of what you're doing here at the Daily Examiner. I really do. I think it's great. You've cross-examined me and I've been looking at your articles and I've just thought you've achieved a consistently high standard. So congratulations.
Oh, thanks for that, Loves. Hey, Harry's just posted a comment up here, which I think gets to the point that I want to raise as well. I was trespassed from the Avondale Library for the protest drag queen story hour in Avondale Library. Police warned us multiple times that we'd be arrested. We said we were prepared to be arrested and still weren't arrested. What they've done to Liz is lunacy. So on Harry's point here, and from my experience, obviously police don't, in New Zealand at least, from what I've seen, tend to just jump in and brutalize people like that. And so I think what we're missing here, and what's missing from the story, is context before the event. So we've heard up from when you were approached by airport security. Was there anything before you were approached by airport security that might have provoked such a response? Because I know also you mentioned to Sean Plunkett in the text that you sent him that he read out on air, pretty much personal insults about the officer that arrested you. Do you think that there was a conspiracy against you before that? Because I mean, in my opinion, the officer didn't wake up. I mean, the officer may not have even known who you were. He probably didn't wake up in the morning planning to arrest you. What are your thoughts around that?
What was your reference to personal insults from Sean to me, or what were you saying?
Oh, sorry.
There?
When you texted Sean about the officer that arrested you, the terms that you used to describe the officer in the text were probably bordering on insulting. I don't know if you may not have meant it that way, but just the way that you described
I
him.
said he had. It was slightly sardonic, but it was slightly humorous. It's got a slight bit of Kiwi humor in it. But I was saying he sort of had these large. I was trying to emphasize the fact he had very large muscles. He was probably twice my weight. He was pushing right up against me with his chest right out, really intimidatory behavior. And had sort of looked like those huge steroidal muscles that men get when they pump a lot in the gym. And, he's taller than me. And I think I said to Sean, and, he had a sort of too tight shirt on, a small neck, and possibly an intellect that matched it. And the reason I said that was, as I went on to elaborate, when I ask an officer of the law in this country, as somebody with legal training, under what law are you purporting to act? I absolutely expect them to have the intelligence and the, integrity to say to me, oh, it's under this section of this statute that I am acting. And he just told me straight out. He didn't have to tell me. Well, that really upsets me. And later on in the piece to Sean, I said, what are the standards of recruitment under Andrew Costa, the head of the police, who, we saw last week, was already up in a bit of hot water for telling things that were not strictly true about Hawke's Bay and what was going on there and misleading Chris Hipkins. So, it behoves us to ask these questions. That's not being rude. It's not being gratuitously rude. It's saying that was an extraordinarily unintelligent and absolutely inaccurate and quite frankly illegal answer that police officer gave me. He can't go around roughing up a grandmother or any New Zealander with no explanation of what she's done wrong, under what statute done this apparent wrong, and without any kind of warning at all. So, in answer to your earlier question, I've had many people contact me this week saying, do you think they were just targeting you? Is it to rough you up, to try to intimidate you, to stop you speaking out, to stop you putting out stories of those who've been silenced, hurt, wounded by the jab, abused in Wellington? I try to tell the stories, as you do, that the mainstream media is conveniently, and the politicians are conveniently going, la, 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 I don't want to hear them. So I try to do what good journalists should do, which is dig out those stories that are being hidden and ask, why are they being hidden? And what is going on in New Zealand? And why are we going so wrong in this country? And as someone said to me earlier this week, my God, Liz, this is really waking up Kiwis who before this were going, oh, well, yeah, the COVID thing wasn't very good, but I guess Jacinda was nice. I'm not quite sure about her, but I suppose we'll all get back to normal. No, we won't get back to normal till we look at the horrors that are being perpetrated under this government and sadly by our New Zealand police on innocent Kiwis.
Oh, thanks for clarifying that. Good to hear your perspective on those, because I know Sean just gave his opinion on it. So it's good to hear your side.
I'll tell you who was insulting. That was Sean. He absolutely said he'd give me a respectful platform, and he read that out in the most derisory tone. And what I gather, I never listened to him, but so many people contacted me and said they're disgusted, they're turning off him, they don't want to watch him anymore, that they thought that it showed up him, not me. That sort of lack of professionalism, lack of respect. And for me, I'd never trust him again. He gave me the assurances and then showed me through his actions he had no sincerity at all in his assurances.
Right. Okay, so just to clarify finally, last thing. So from the moment that you walked into the airport and until you were approached by the security staff, there was nothing that provoked any sort of response that would justify what happened to you?
It's a good question. So I got there a little bit late because I'd rung the airport and they'd said the plane was half an hour late coming from Apia in Samoa. So I got there and my cameraman and friend, I say my cameraman because he knows how to do a camera and I know how to do an interview. So we call each other that, but we're friends, we're mates.
Right.
he had been wandering around with the camera, on full display for sort of 45 minutes till I got there, having a coffee. Nobody had asked him anything. And then when I get there, and there were these other lovely supporters, and I said, I'd like to ask you. I'd just like to ask you, his beautiful man, his name was Keith, what brought you out on a Saturday night to meet a family you don't actually know? And he was telling me, I feel it's a really personal story. We should all care about the Pashalisios. The Tokolauans are our brothers and sisters. And to see that all of us who stood up for them, helped them get out of this, in effect, prison for over a year for not having a jab, it really meant a lot to me. It was a lovely, lovely interview. And that was all we were doing. And then this little Indian security guard, I think he was, came up, and I just went up, can I help you? And then he said, have you got a pass? And I said, we're not a commercial organization. And then he went off. And then this other woman came who was very, highly aggressive. And I think we've picked up the story from there. So that was all that happened. But what was interesting was that Jonathan wasn't accosted. It was only when I came on the scene, which, with all these people asking me, were you targeted? That bit is potentially evidence that I was. But I have yet to clarify that.
Right. Oh, thank you very much for that. Thank you for answering my cross-examination. Hope you enjoyed coming on our show. I'm looking forward to seeing the results of the court case, and we do wish you all the best. But thank you very much for your time tonight coming on, Liz.
It's a stand for all of us. I was momentarily, for a moment, tempted. Take the easy path. But New Zealand, when we take the road less traveled, the one that is the harder path, it is the rockier path, we serve each other. And that's what we have to do. If we want to win back our freedom and win our country from these would-be tyrants, we have to be willing to stand for one another and care that much. And I care, and I know there are thousands of you who do, and I thank you all for your support. And thank you for this rigorous interview. It's been good. I've really enjoyed it. It's honorable. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. Much appreciated. We'll let you go now, but thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to speaking again in future. You have a good night.
Cheers. Sam. Bye.